Hey everyone, welcome back to KelsTells. Today I received well, not really today, but in the past couple of, weeks, I've been checking my comments and I received a question about whether or not a small chapter is a bad sign, more or less. And we're going to address that today because coming from someone who was a part of a big chapter that became a small chapter that became a big chapter again, I can give you an idea of what that experience is like, and from the outside looking in what that looks like versus being on the inside and looking on the outside what that experience is like. So essentially it is not a bad sign when you see a smaller chapter. However, having a small chapter does have its challenges. I do have a video on my channel that talks specifically about the small chapter experience. I personally, like I said, I don't think that it's a bad sign, but I do think that it's something worth considering if you want to join an undergraduate chapter that is smaller in size in comparison to other chapters either in your area or just other organizations that have chapters on your campus. So let's get into it. So from the outside looking in as an interest, a small chapter has its pros and its cons, one of which being size. So essentially what would make a chapter small? I would say anything less than 10 people is considered a small chapter in my opinion, and it does depend on like the ratio of, is it a smaller campus as far as Greek life or is it a large campus in terms of Greek life, because small is relative. Some people would consider 10 to be a lot because if you are on a smaller campus, the black ratio of students tends to be smaller in itself. So 10 may be considered a lot. So small is relative. If it's 2, that's definitely small. So to give you like a perspective. So smaller chapters do have their challenges to where if you're on the outside looking in, you're trying to figure out how everything gets done if it's only a couple of people in a chapter doing it. And most of the time they're doing it. And I think that it's something to be said about smaller chapters that still make an impact on their campus because they are still doing the work despite not having the traditional numbers or like numbers in general, because some people do look for numbers when they want to join an organization. Are there a lot of people when they have initiation? Do they have that 20-person initiation or do they have like 7 people initiated? That matters to people. Having a large chapter matters, and there are pros and cons to both. And like I said, I do have a video on my channel that talks specifically about small versus large chapters, so I'll link it somewhere for you guys to watch as well. But these again are just my perspectives on it. So smaller chapters, the con is, how are they getting things done? Are they running themselves ragged, trying to make sure that they're keeping up? Is that something that once you become a member, do you consider that when you join you're going to be the one doing all the running around? So those are things to be thinking about when you're thinking of smaller chapters. But also it has its pros, because when you're thinking of things like when the institution is looking at the ratio of things like GPA, you have smaller numbers that you have to work with. So if you have 3 people in your chapter and all 3 of you have a very high GPA, that's going to boost up your chances of having a higher GPA as a chapter. Or with community service, if all of the people in your chapter have at least 50 hours of community service under their belt, that's 150 hours of community service as a chapter. So less to work with in terms of numbers, but also a lot of work in general. So just bear that in mind. From the inside, so for someone who's been a part of a smaller chapter, I will say that it is work, and you do have to make sure that you're on top of things as the member of your smaller chapter, especially if you're in a leadership role, right? Because there aren't a lot of roles for people to hold. Intake is going to be important because you need to get people into the chapter in order to fill up these positions. Like the president can't also be the treasurer, right? Or the vice president can't also be the president. So you have to have help. So when you're an interest and you're looking at a smaller chapter, I would say go in with the mindset that you have skills and connections that would help make the chapter better, and use that as your like fuel to promote yourself during the interest process of telling the members all the things that you can be helpful and all the things that you can do in order to help make the chapter better. For example, if the chapter is lacking in something and you know that you have the ability to build it up, like for example, they're not participating in yard shows because two people can't do everything at once, right? If you have yourself and like 4 other interests that are interested in joining, that's 6 people in a chapter now, and maybe you're really good at creating steps or strolls, and you can be like, I know that I have these skills in dance and I want to help promote the chapter on the like social level of just activities and making sure that we're having good presentations, not neophyte presentations, but presentations in terms of yard shows. I want to make sure that our presence is seen. And speaking from someone who came from a small chapter, I have done shows where it's just been myself and my sister doing a show, and it's just the 2 of us. Or I think that's the smallest that we've ever had, was that we had a semester where it was just the 2 of us because our prophytes graduated. So we had one semester where it was just the 2 of us, and we were doing all the things. And then at one point, I remember my sister, she was on the yard by herself because I took a semester abroad. So it happens, and she held it down for the one person being on the yard. She held it down for those 3 months that I wasn't there. And then when we came back, we had 5, I think we had 5 people come in, so we were back to being, you know, up in our numbers. So paying attention to those things, and then also knowing what you can bring to the table is really important. If joining a small chapter concerns you, which I don't think it should, know that you're probably not the only person interested in joining that organization. So when they host an interest meeting or when they host formal, you're not going to be the only one that joins at that time. Hopefully there are other people that are interested that would join with you, but don't let the small chapter scare you. See it as an opportunity for you to help the chapter grow. Those are just my thoughts and perspectives, but I hope that you guys found this helpful. If you like it, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in our next sorority talk.